We also focus on clarity and effectiveness of what you write. So we suggest improvements to your writing, to phrasing and sentences to help you be more understood, to help you be more clear, and to help achieve communication goals.
Do you want to impact the world and still turn a profit? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Growth Everywhere. This is the show where you'll find real conversations with real entrepreneurs. They'll share everything from their biggest struggle to the exact strategies they use on a daily basis. So if you're ready for a value-packed interview, listen on. Here's your host, Eric Siu.
Before we jump into today's interview, if you guys could leave a review and a rating and also subscribe as well, that would be a huge help to the podcast. So if you actually enjoy the content and you'd like to hear more of it, please support us by leaving us a review and subscribe to the podcast as well. Thanks so much. Okay, everyone. Today we have Max Lytvyn, who is a co-founder of Grammarly. And if you guys watch any YouTube videos at all, I'm sure you've seen the Grammarly ads. And I've actually seen a lot of Grammarly ads everywhere. And we're going to talk about the entire story about, well, basically how they got there in the first place. So Grammarly is basically something that helps you, well, it's a free grammar checker, and it helps you eliminate grammatical errors and enhances your writing. And it's used by millions and millions of people. So Max, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me, Eric. And just wanted to talk a little bit about Grammarly and clarify a few things about what it does. As its name implies, it does correct grammar and spelling, but it goes quite a bit beyond that. We also focus on clarity and effectiveness of what you write. So we suggest improvements to your writing, to phrasing and sentences to help you be more understood, to help you be more clear, and to help achieve communication goals.
Wonderful. So before we even dive too much into the product itself, I want to learn kind of what's your story?
Sure. So I'm originally from Ukraine, which is country in Europe, and I started working with tech in general as a teenager back in the early 90s, built my own computer out of radio parts, started coding in assembly language and basically machine code, and eventually started getting interested in tech business. And in about 2001, 2002, I moved to the business side. Basically stopped coding and started thinking about building companies. Yeah, I lived in Canada and US most of my adult life.
And so how about the idea for Grammarly? I mean, how did that come about?
So my business partner and I, we were working on our previous company, and that company was providing plagiarism detection technology. Essentially technology that helps detect text that's not original, that's copied from somewhere. And as part of our work, we often were faced with question from our clients, like why our employees or why our students plagiarize, and like how do we discourage that? And when it wasn't really part of the work we were doing. We were not in business of answering such questions, but because our clients asked and you want to be client focused, we did some digging and research and trying to understand why people plagiarize. And one of the biggest reasons was that it is incredibly difficult to take your thoughts and put them in writing, put them into a document or a message or a presentation. It is just difficult and intimidating to many people. And what we decided to do then, we decided to address this issue or this challenge from a more fundamental direction, making it easier, not necessarily policing plagiarism, but making it easier to write something of your own, making it easier to take what's in your head and put it in words. And that's how idea of Grammarly came about. At the time, the idea seemed quite a bit out there because it was 2008, 2009 when we started thinking about it, and the technology wasn't quite there. So we had to really think of how to make it possible. So we broke it down into pieces, into stages, essentially, from simpler to more complex. So we started with spelling, then grammar, then clarity, style, tone, and then eventually to effectiveness. Thinking help you achieve the goals of your communication. So let's say you're writing a blog post that's intended to inform people about specific concept. Is that blog post achieving that goal? Is that informative? Is it understandable? And so on. So basically that's kind of a holy grail.
Got it. Okay. And what kind of numbers can you share around the business today?
What I can share is we are over 10 million daily active users. So just to clarify what it means for those not familiar with the term, it doesn't mean that we have 10 million users. We have way, way, way more than that. It means that in any single day, at least 10,000 different people use our product actively. So that's one number I can share. In November of last year, we made 4.5 billion suggestions in text written by our users. So that's kind of another number I can share. And our team is at about 150, just over 150 people in 3 offices around the world.
Got it. Okay. And how does pricing work for this product?
So we have a free product. It is essentially a freemium model where we have a free product that has a subset of functionality, and then we have a premium product that has everything. And premium product is pricing ranges from $30 per month to $145 per year.
Got it. Okay. And you mentioned, I guess backing up a second. So the premium model, I mean, what kinds of people are using the premium model? I mean, for myself, if I can take myself back to college, I could definitely see myself using something like this. But yeah, what kind of person would use the paid versions?
It's a very broad range of very broad range of people because there's so many ways people get value from the product. Students is one example that you brought it up, and it's a very good example. Students use Grammarly because so much of their work is in writing, and so much of their successes depends on the quality of their writing. But they're not the only segment that's in this position. Consultants, marketers, financial analysts, also kind of knowledge workers, much of their output is actually written documents or messages. In their case as well, their productivity and their degree of success to a large extent depends on the quality of their communication, the quality of their written communication. So that's on the professional side. On non-professional users, people want to rent out their apartment, want to update their resume to find a job, want their dating profile to look better, and these might be kind of instances when they decide to upgrade to premium product.
Right. Okay. I guess what year did you start the business again?
2009.
Got it. And so you started the business in 2009. You guys have raised, according to Crunchbase, $110 million, but that was way later, right? So it wasn't like you guys just started this and it blew up, right? So, you started it, and I guess I want people to kind of get an idea of like what that growth trajectory looked like for you guys. What did it look like over the years? Because, everyone all thinks it's sunshine and flowers when it really isn't.
Well, we bootstrapped. And we bootstrapped for a really long time. We only got our first funding round less than a year ago as a premature company, and we bootstrapped up until then. And because we bootstrapped, we grew in a very responsible way, which maybe was slower than we could have grown if we took funding. But at the same time, we had full control over what we were doing, and we were not distracted by fundraising. So there are pros and cons. But part of the reason it took us so many years to grow to the scale is that we bootstrapped, and the first few years we were really concerned with just survival. So anything we did, we had to make sure it had a very short, very quick payback period. Kind of any new feature we built, any new investment we made in product or marketing, it had to have a quick payback. So there was a very strong limitation early on when we didn't have any money. But then eventually, as the company built up its kind of profit cushion, we could afford to be more strategic and think about future more and build for the future, not just for a quick return. So that's how kind of bootstrapping shaped our strategy to some extent. Yeah, and that kind of gives you some idea of trajectory.
How long did it take for you to build up those cash reserves? Because you talked about bootstrapping, needing to kind of be mindful of kind of cash reserves and all that.
Well, it's not binary, so it's hard to say that, we kind of were building up cash reserve for 2 years and then we switched to kind of high growth mode. It's not like that. It's a gradual process. So early on, it was survival was a singular focus, maybe for first 6 to 12 months. And then starting from there, we could afford to think more and more about, what company do we want to be when we grow up, and what's our mission, vision, and how do we want to impact this world?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what was your guys' timeline? I'm not saying it's binary or anything, but what did it, how long did it take? Was it like 3 years, 4 years? I think it's just good for people to look at the story.
Yeah, definitely. So what I'm saying is about a year, probably first year, we were just survival focused. No kind of course, we had our vision. We had some ideas of how the future would look like. But what we did in practice was focused on just kind of getting enough revenue to continue existing and to continue building. And then after about 1 year, we had enough surplus to be more strategic in how we build our product, how we do our marketing, and so on.
Great. Love it. Okay. And you talked about, not a lot of people, even though we have a lot of SaaS entrepreneurs on this podcast, the concept of payback period is really important. So can you kind of talk about definition of payback period and, just how it looked for you guys and how you see that term?
Yes, sure. For us, initially, our payback period was pretty much instantaneous because we spent an acquisition less and user paid us right away when they bought the product. So basically, payback was just right away, at least payback period for marketing. Payback period for product enhancements, that's harder to calculate. I can't even calculate that because, some of the things we designed back then are still generating revenue. So that part is just too fuzzy.
Right.
But for kind of unit economics in terms of marketing, it was instantaneous payback period. And we had to do that because we just didn't have any cash reserves when we started with Bootstrap.
Right. Makes total sense. So, look at your payback period. You guys don't have the luxury of waiting. You guys didn't raise money, right? So it's not like you had a cushion to protect yourself. So I think, it's not a particularly sexy product, or not product, but term to talk about, but it's really important, especially for any kind of subscription business to pay attention to your payback period, because if you can pay back faster, you can reinvest it, you can grow faster at the end of the day. Okay. So, in the early days, you guys have, 10 million, you said daily active users, right?
Yep.
So in the early days, I guess, how did you go about acquiring, let's just say, your first, 100,000 customers?
So we approached it from two dimensions, from two directions. We didn't know which one is going to work better. So we approached it from directions of, so we were doing B2B sales, went to conferences, trade shows, showed our product, talk to potential buyers. It was very helpful to kind of get feedback and to learn about what the pains we can solve, what are the pains we can solve for our users. So that was one direction. And then another was consumer. So we marketed to consumers, and we marketed through social media and paid advertising. And paid advertising, many early startups shy away from paid advertising because it's viewed as expensive, and it is expensive. But the benefit of that, compared to, for example, SEO or content marketing, is that it is an instantaneous feedback loop. Let's say you design a banner or write an ad copy, and you can measure its effectiveness, how many people click, who see it, or how many people who click convert. You can measure it in hours, within hours. You can get feedback on that. And it allowed us at the time to test different ideas, to test different messaging, positioning, even features. For example, we included descriptions of specific features in ads, very brief, short descriptions, of course. And by reaction of potential users on those ads, we could see if the feature is worth building or not even. So that's kind of some trick that you can use with paid advertising, but you cannot use it with organic channels, because organic channels, like, you create a piece of content, you promote it via SEO, and it's already there. It's relatively static. You can't really do much experimentation with what's in it. So that's why I would not discourage any starting entrepreneurs from dabbling with paid, just because you have so much control over it and you can use it for learning, not necessarily for mass acquisition.
Great. And so what do you think, I mean, and today, today your team's much bigger. So, what's one unique thing you think you're doing in terms of customer acquisition today?
Well, it is an interesting question, because that's the thing about marketing. There is no one thing, because as soon as you get good at something, what do? You scale, and you scale until it stops being good, until you hit the kind of marginal benefit equals marginal cost. So it's like no point in increasing it anymore. And then what do you do next? You discover something else. So there is not one thing, because as soon as we hit a gold mine, we basically tap it. And when it's fully tapped, we look for next one. So the one thing that I think is really important is building a process, or building a machine, a team capable of discovering those gold mines on a reliable schedule. And that's incredibly hard. It's very hard, because it's almost like, going to a casino and predicting how much you're going to win by the end of the night. But that's what it takes to generate reliable growth, because everything taps out pretty quickly. And you just have to build a machine that kind of is capable of drilling new wells.
So you're talking about hiring a great growth team, right? And essentially.
Yes. Yeah. Hiring. It's not just hiring. It starts with hiring, of course. When you get the right people, it's much easier to build the right team. But team is not just hiring. It's also the culture. It's also the processes. It's a lot of components.
Great. So the reason I'm asking that is because I think, a lot of people here they understand the concept of building a great team, a great culture and everything. I'm looking more for, tactically, is there anything you think there's something unique that you're doing from a customer acquisition perspective? Yeah,
just as I said, focusing on the process of trying new things on a fairly aggressive schedule. So I think that's one thing that often underestimated, because there's just no magic bullet. There is just 1,000 different things you need to try. Some of them will work, some of them are not going to work. And the quicker and the better you are at trying those different things, the faster you're going to generate growth. That's pretty much it.
So before we go any further, I just wanted to tell you about a problem that entrepreneurs have been coming to me with. They don't know what they need to do next to grow their business, or they don't have the right resources to execute on marketing needs. Oftentimes, they don't have a marketing strategy, or they don't know who or what to hire for. If this sounds like something that you've been dealing with, I have a solution for you. Single Grain is a growth marketing agency ran by yours truly that has worked with venture-backed startups to Fortune 500 companies to help solve their marketing issues. Our strong points are in SEO and paid advertising, and if you need help in other areas, we're always happy to tap into our network of highly vetted vendors that we can even help manage for you. So there's no need to stress yourself out trying to find the right people for the job, because we've got you covered. So if you're interested in this, just go to growtheverywhere.com/help to get more information. Once again, that's growtheverywhere.com/help. Okay. So what do you think, in terms of going back to, the early days of the business, or maybe even later stages, what's one big struggle you faced while growing the business?
I hate sounding like a broken record, but it's a somewhat similar answer, because it's always a new struggle. You run into a challenge, and then that challenge seems like it's huge, it's bigger than anything you've seen before, and you don't know how to solve it, but then eventually you solve it, and then 2-3 months later, it seems like, oh yeah, that was so trivial.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, for example, starting with marketing channels that cannot be measured precisely. We struggled with that. We didn't know how to do that. We didn't kind of making the switch from where you spend $1 and you get $2 back to when you spend $1 and you don't know how much you got back. You have to estimate it. You have to triangulate it, or you have to make a leap of faith and wait for like several months for it to materialize. So kind of switching to or increasing the proportion of those channels was a little bit of a struggle for us. And we just learned how to do it, and now it isn't.
Got it. Okay, great. And so did you guys build some internal tools where you can measure, that out pretty easily? Because nowadays there's a lot of SaaS solutions, but I imagine a couple of years ago, what did you guys do to solve that?
A number of things. So it's not just one thing, but One is just kind of doing bigger things and looking at aggregate impact or aggregate change, using more sophisticated measurement things, understanding the value of brand better, and so on and so forth. So it's rarely just one thing. If it was one thing, it would be too easy, and it would not be a challenge. It would be something you just read the recipe and execute on the recipe. But things that become challenges usually are solved with not just doing one thing.
Great. And so, you started early days. You started when the company, the inception of the company. How has your day-to-day changed since the inception to now with, we're talking over 100 people?
It's changed a lot. So initially it was just basically everything. You have to come up with an idea. You have to execute an idea, code, draw mock-ups. Then you had to market that idea to users, and then you had to do accounting and taxes in the end. So basically one person doing everything. And then eventually, with time, you're starting to specialize. You start to think, what am I best at? What should be mine, and what I should hire somebody to do that. So that's kind of the step one. And then step two, you just stop doing things on your own at all and become just manager or leader, and just make things happen, not do it themselves, but just arrange pieces so that the things start happening. Hire teams, build processes, and so on. So that's kind of the next stage. And then the stage after that is not even arranging things yourself, not even building teams yourself, but creating leaders who do that inside your company. That's kind of the next stage after that.
Great. And actually just transitions to the next thing. I talked to a friend. He has, a lot of his development team in Ukraine. Seems like you have an office in Kiev, right?
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. So, talk about that a little bit. Talk about working with, developers in Ukraine. Is most of your dev team over there? How's the engineering team structured over there at Grammarly?
So, we have engineering teams, in San Francisco, Kiev, and New York. And each team is relatively independent, and it's not like managers are in one place and then developers are in another place. It's they are just independent, relatively independent units. The team in Kiev is the biggest by size, and so it's not. At least in our case, it's not not any kind of outsourcing or offshoring. It's just 3 geographically distributed offices.
So how does that work? Different time zones and everything. Do you expect them to work? How do you deal with the time zone difference? Because some of our developers, are they're Eastern/Western European. I'm just curious how you guys do it.
Time difference is a challenge. So communication is not a challenge because there are video calls and asynchronous work on documents, like Slack and Jira, Asana, everything. There are tools to communicate across distance, but time zone is one thing that is harder to overcome because we don't want people to compromise their lifestyle. We don't want people to be uncomfortable and to kind of create debt with their families. So the way we are overcoming this is making teams not locked to each other. So nobody's waiting for the other team to wake up or to respond to a call. They're independent enough not to have to just wait for each other.
Got it. Okay. So to make things simple, I guess I'm trying to, visualize this, right? So you might say, just to give an example, Ukrainian team might focus on working on, sales related, items, right? And then, SF team might be focused on working on, marketing focused items, right? So is that how you kind of break them out to different tasks?
You could say that. It's not exactly like that, but I think that this is a good simplified analogy that, they do have different tasks that they are equipped to complete on their own with maybe some feedback, some questions, but not frequent and not blocking.
Got it. Okay. So what is one must-read book you'd recommend to everyone?
This is a hard one because there's so many good ones, and they kind of you need to read more than one book to be a successful entrepreneur. And I can't pick which one is more important. And it's going to be one for some people and the other for the other. But I think two books that are absolutely essential would be Mindset and Grit. Simple names. I don't remember. I don't want to butcher the authors' names because I don't remember them exactly. But I think these books they don't give you recipes. They don't give you specific answers. But what they give you is values that are going to guide you to find solutions to the challenges and to make right decisions.
Right. Love it. Both those books are good. We'll drop them in the show notes. But Max, this has been great. What's the best way for people to find you online?
LinkedIn, that's the tool I use the most for professional networking. Twitter as well. Yeah.
Wonderful. Max, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Everywhere. If you loved what you heard, be sure to head back to growtheverywhere.com for today's show notes and a ton of additional resources. But before you go, hit the subscribe button to avoid missing out on next week's value-packed interview. Enjoy the rest of your week, and remember to take action and continue growing.